Hello, folks. Welcome back to the AA Big Book Stories. I'm your host, Jason. Today's video was brought to you by James 414 Vape Sales. It's James 414 Vape Sales. We have a little visitor. Oh, look how big my puppy's got. Say, hey, Jade. Huh? Ain't see him getting big, girl. Today, we're on story number 13 of part 3 of the stories in the back of the books, Alcoholics Anonymous. A late start. It's been 10 years since I retired, 7 years since I joined AA. Now I can truly say that I am a grateful alcoholic. I am a 75-year-old alcoholic. For 55 of those 75 years, I led what is known as a normal middle-class life. Alcohol had been little part in it as candied yams. Nice when there, but unmissed when absent. The home in which I grew up in included 2 loving parents, 1 older brother, a constant flow of house pets, riding horses, and friends who were welcomed. Discipline in our house was strict but not out of line with the thinking that prevalent during the first quarter of the 20th century. Certainly, I don't consider that I was in any way abused. I attended private school and later in a Midwestern college. I married, had children, worked, experienced the pain of death of parents and of a child. Knew too the pleasure of real friends and financial success. I enjoyed horseback riding, swimming, tennis, and quiet evenings filled with children, books, and friends. What happened to me somewhere between ages of 55 and 63, I had no idea. Was life too much? Did some latent gene suddenly decide to take on a fierce life of its own? I don't know. What I do know is that at 65 I was a crawling, dirty maggot of a woman willing to tarnish all that I had worked for and desecrate every dear relationship I had. I know too that through a wonderful set of God-guided circumstances and people, I was led to the only possible course of behavior that will keep me sane, sober, constructive, and happy. I was 20 when I had my first drink, and although I liked the taste, I did not like the way it made me feel. I didn't drink again until I was in my early 30s and thought it made me seem cool and sophisticated. During these early years, a couple of drinks were enough, and I often nursed one scotch on the rocks for a full evening. When I was 35, my 12-year-old son was diagnosed with an incurable cancer, and within a few months my husband demanded a divorce. For the following 5 years while my son lived, I seldom drank and never drank alone. Agony, fear, hurt, exhaustion did not make me a drunk. Happiness opened the door to that much later. During my mid-40s, my interest in alcohol began to gain momentum. Although I had continued to work, I had otherwise isolated myself to care for my son and his younger sister, each of whom required a special dose of stability, love, and security. Soon after my son's death, I decided effort to re-enter the adult world. My debut encouraged my drinking. It was not yet obsessive, but drinking became more and more a part of my daily life. I no longer entertained without several cocktails, and seldom attended gatherings where liquor was not provided. I always managed to find the positive activity drinking crowd, whether it was after a dog obedience training or an oil painting class. During my late 40s, it was not unusual for me to have a drink alone in the evening, although there were still many days where I didn't drink at all. In any event was an occasion for excessive celebration, and there were increasingly frequent weekends where I drank myself to a hangover creating high. Nevertheless, it was during this period that I received a major job promotion. I was 49 when my second husband and I were married. Years before we had dated, although though we had dated through high school and 2 years of college, but were separated by World War II. Each of us had married elsewhere, divorced, and 30 years later we met by chance. We had 10 years of laughter, sharing, and wonderment we laced with martinis and scotch on the rocks. By the time I was 60, anyone wise with ways of alcoholism would have known I was in for big trouble. Happy plans dissolved into pouts, arguments began, and meals burned. Happy plans dissolved into pouts, arguments began, and meals burnt. Hurricanes of anger rushed through our once happy cottage. We agreed we were drinking too much. We tried to switch techniques and time-controlled schedule the drink only on the weekends ploy. Nothing worked. Between us, we were badly damaging our budget. My husband lost his job, and then for 2 harrowing years I watched him die of alcoholism. But I learned nothing from his death, and my drinking escalated as I bottle fed my sorrows. My early 60s saw me drunk every night and more frequently calling in sick for personal leave. Life was pure and unadulterated hell. At work I was often shaking so badly that I hesitated to give dictation because I would have to sign the letters. I made every possible excuse to meet someone for a business luncheon so that I could have a drink or two. As my alcoholism accelerated, so did my absenteeism. Increase was and my productivity diminished. I bounced checks, pawned silver, mourned, and I continued my drinking. Finally, one cold winter day, I called Alcoholics Anonymous, and that evening 2 ladies took me to a meeting. We had a 25-minute ride in the car, and I remember how good it was to talk about my fear and shakes, how kind they were without encouraging my self-pity. I remember being given a cup of coffee, and I could hardly handle the hearing impossible promises that would materialize if I could only make the impossible commitment. I did not want to stop. The lady suggested that I go to a women's meeting the next night, and I did. I had a drink first, of course, and when it came time to identify myself, I stated that my brain told me I was alcoholic, but the rest of me didn't believe it. The next night it snowed, and I stayed home and drank. This was the end of my first try at AA. Some months later, I invited my daughter and son-in-law to dinner to celebrate her birthday. They found me sprawled across the living room floor, passed out cold. What a mournful birthday present. It took very little persuasion to convince me to go into the detoxification program at the local hospital. I knew I was in trouble. I was ashamed and heartbroken that I had caused her such hurt. 7 days in detox and 8 weeks of really good help from my psychologist, and I was dry, sober, and ready to face the world again. My doctor strongly suggested that I participate in the local AA program, but I would have none of it. I was cured. I needed no further help. A year and a half later, I retired. I was enjoying my new freedom and gave myself permission to have a drink only when I was dining out. That worked well. That worked so well that I made a new rule. I could have a cocktail before dinner and after dinner drink. Then I made a rule that I could serve alcohol to my friends in my home. That, of course, is the rule that sent me spinning right back down into fearful drunkenness. I was worse than before. My self-imposed hell was in my own home, unbathed in the same nightclothes day after day, afraid of the phone doorbell and the darkness. If the clock said 6, I wouldn't know whether it was 6 in the morning or evening. Days ran into each other in an agonizing blur. I crawled into bed drunk when I came to, and sat there shivering in fear with some unknown tragedy that I thought was about to descend on me. I remember wailing because I couldn't make coffee, sitting curled up in the corner trying to sort out how I could commit suicide without making a mess. I might have tried it, but I was afraid no one would find me before I started to stink. Once again, my daughter came to my rescue and checked me into a detox program at the hospital. This time I was there for 10 days. During that time, AA meetings were available at the hospital. I was genuinely touched by the fact that they were led by a young man in a leg cast and on crutches, especially when I realized he came there as a volunteer, and twice before I left I was giving a leave of absence to attend the local AA meetings. Others have stated that they eagerly embraced the AA program. Unlike them, I did not enter the rooms willingly, nor did I find myself immediately at home. However, I had no other option. There was no escape. There was no escape route that I had not tried, none that I had not led me to another failure. I was 69 years old. I had neither time nor health to waste. For 6 months I did not drink, attending meetings, and sometimes I read the big book. I went to meetings exactly on time, sat quietly, and left as soon as the meetings were closed. In no way was I part of the group. I was not impressed by the sayings and did not really believe the messages I heard. Then one day I was called on to share, and I proceeded to explode. I announced that in no way was I a grateful alcoholic, that I hated my condition, and that I did not enjoy meetings, and that I did not leave the meetings refreshed. I found neither ease nor growth in the fellowship. My healing began with the arrogance of that statement. One woman came to me after the meeting and told me I was about to go out. She offered to help me find a sponsor and led me to the exact person I needed. This lady had 19 years of sobriety and, even more important, a wealth of experience in helping and guiding alcoholics through the steps of AA. By no means do I intend to imply that I leaped with pleasure into this program. I stalled and resented and refused to accept each step as it came up. I felt challenged by each new concept and resentful toward my sponsor, who seemed intent on reducing me to abject stupidity. It was years before I realized that I resented the changes the program asked me to make, not my sponsor. With the patience and unconditional love, she led me to acknowledge first that I was powerless over my alcoholism, then that conquered others before me had conquered their illness, that there had to be some source of help higher than any one of us, and that together we were a well of strength on which any one of us could draw. From that point, it was not hard to venture into realization that a power greater than any one of us existed. And with that understanding, I found a direction to my own special higher power. On that spiritual foundation, I began to build a new life. The third step was the most difficult for me. but having completed it, I found that I could face or untangle the other steps if and when I could remember to relax and trust the program and implement the steps rather than to fight it. Accepting my higher power did not fully change my attitude of resistance, it just made yielding to the instruction a more rational and acceptable mode of behavior. For each step, I still had to go through the process in recognizing that I had no control over my drinking. I had to understand that steps of Alcoholics Anonymous had helped others and could help me. Excuse me. I had to realize that if I did want sobriety, I had better do the steps, whether I liked them or not. Every time I ran into trouble, I ultimately found that I was resisting change. My mentor had to remind me that AA is not just a project. AA offers me an opportunity to improve the quality of my life. I came to recognize that there is always a deeper and wilder experience awaiting me. Early in my growth, I remember thanking my sponsor for the hours she had given me. She said, "Don't you think that you will do the same for someone else someday?" I replied, "I will never be responsible to or for anyone else ever again." That refusal to make any kind of repayment to the program delayed my offering to be of service in any capacity, and consequently delayed my maturing process. Not until 2 years had passed was I willing to act as group secretary. It was 4 years before I was willing to sponsor anyone. Today it is with real gratitude that I am allowed into the lives of few women. My own understanding and broadening and, and broadening and deepened by their influence in my life. As a newcomer, I examined each step. Both she and I received new insight and find an additional faucet to the jewel of sobriety. I am proud now to be a part of the fellowship that showed me the path up and out of hell. Now I'm eager to share my experiences as others had shared theirs with me. Small miracles keep offering new opportunities just when I need change and growth. New friends I have shown me hidden truth in those things and I once found so shallow. The lessons of tolerance and acceptance have taught me to look beyond the exterior appearance and find the help and wisdom so often lurking beneath the surface. All my sobriety and growth, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, have depended upon my willingness to listen and understand change. During my 5th year, as a part of my annual personal inventory, I realized that I had not succeeded in developing a spiritual depth in my program. I had accepted that I was taught what I was taught but had not gone in search of a private growth that I saw in others. I watched for and found people who take this program with them as they live, work, and play in the real world. Through their leadership by precept and example, I am finding a daily excitement essential to my development as a person and my contact with my higher power. I approached I approached Alcohol Anonymous with fear and hesitation, then urged by the dread of what was behind me. I took tiny, delicate steps into the new path when I found the footing was firm. Each tentative move brought me a little nearer to trust. Confidence grew, and my faith in my higher power expanded, and I came to recognize a light I had not known existed. Sometimes something within me shifted and welcomed a new source of strength, understanding, tolerance, and love. That selfish, withdrawn woman who announced she would never be responsible to or for anyone ever again now finds secure warmth in just being available. I count it a privilege to help another drunk. It's been 10 years since I retired and 7 years since I joined AA. Now I can truly say that I am a grateful alcoholic. Had I not become a drunk, I would have become another sober but sad statistic. At 75, I would be a lonely, unproductive old woman, watching TV, doing needlepoint in my home without friends, and sinking farther and farther into old age depression. As it is, AA has filled my days with friends, laughter, and growth, and the feeling of worth that is rooted in constructive activity. My faith in and contact with my higher power shines more brightly than I dreamed it could. The promises that I thought were impossible are a viable source in my life. I am free to laugh all of my laughter, free to trust and be trusted, free to both give and receive help. I am free from shame and regret, free to learn and grow and work. I have left that lonely, frightening, painful experience train through hell. I accept the gift of a safer, happier journey through life. Okay, that's it for today, folks. If you don't mind, hit that like button, and if you wish, hit the subscribe button. And if you want to be notified of each new episode, each new video, hit the little bell and let it subscribe to you. Until next time, 1AA time, 1AA place, and 1AA channel.